Second.
All right, welcome everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now that we've moved past the technical issues, I need a motion to approve the agenda for the business meeting tonight, March 30th, 2026.
Eric, Kelly.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. I'd like to move us to open forum. The Greenville Central School District wishes to facilitate public access to meetings of the Board of Education and to provide an opportunity for public comment at these meetings. Accordingly, the open forum provides an opportunity for members of the public to share thoughts about topics on the agenda. An individual's comment shall be limited to 5 minutes. Additionally, comments may be emailed to the district clerk, Daphne Pearson, using the email pearsond@greenvillecsd.org. In order for an email to be read during the meeting, it must be received by 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting and state that the email is to be read out loud. Emails shall be limited to 600 words. Please note that this is not the time to register complaints that need to be addressed confidentially through the proper channels. Remarks that might be considered defamatory, obscene, profane, stigmatizing, or otherwise impermissible in public forums are prohibited and will be declared out of order. Board members actively listen during open forum, but may not immediately respond to comments. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Do we have any emails?
We do not.
Okay, then I'm going to move us on to the budget presentation. And we have an update. I'm going to turn it over to Michael Bennett, our Superintendent of Schools, and Todd Hilgedorf, Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Thank you, Tracy. Again, this is our, just kind of do a follow-up since our last meeting, given that our next meeting in April, we will be asking the board to vote on a budget that will go out to the public in May. So this is a short version with just some couple of updated slides on some information that we've gotten and based on some of the information we got in our last meeting. So at this point, I will turn it over to Mr. Hilgendorf.
Thanks, Mr. Bennett. So the slide that we have up on the screen tonight is an update from where we were on March 9th. So for the last board meeting, there was a slide similar to this where I had presented a potential path to a balanced budget, but there were still some kind of unknowns and things that were still coming into clear picture, so to speak. So tonight, things have kind of solidified, and this is where we currently stand for the budget. Most importantly, on the bottom, this is a balanced budget showing that the expenditures on the left are equal to the revenues on the right. Similar to what we did on March 9th, I'll kind of walk through the list of expenditures, the changes in expenditures, and then the changes in revenue. So starting on the left-hand side, there were a couple of additions, so expenditures meaning an increase in costs. The first one was BOCE's rates. So these rates come in throughout really January, February, and March. So there were just some additional rates that came in over the past couple of weeks, and some of those numbers were higher than what I had projected at 3%, some were a little higher. So total increase there was $28.50. The second one is salary adjustments. So as we mentioned at a couple of different meetings, we do have negotiations happening with the employees across the district at this time. While there's nothing finalized and solidified that we can share in terms of exact contracts, we do know from some of those negotiations and just things trending that we made some adjustments to what were originally projected for some salaries, and there was some increase based on where negotiations are standing. So that was approximately a $10,000 increase on the expenditure side. The rest of the items under expenditure are reductions, meaning that we took things out of the budget for next year. So the third one on the list there, it says 3 teaching positions. This is what we spoke about on March 9th. Those are all positions from retirements that will not be filled. There's also the benefits that go along with those positions. So that's a decrease of $315,000. We have one driver position that had not been filled this year, and our transportation department already made the adjustments and it's functioning as is with our staffing, so we're comfortable reducing one 4-hour driver position, so that's a decrease in approximately $20,000. The next one, health insurance, so this one was the excitement for me last week. We get preliminary rates in January from the RCG Trust, which is the organization that we purchase our health insurance through for the district. So those preliminary rates came in February. The health insurance increase was projected at 8%, and the prescription drug increase was projected at 25.5%. So based on that preliminary rate, I had a health insurance rate increase from this current year into next year. Last year, the RCG Trust had their monthly March meeting, and that's the meeting where they actually present the kind of firm rate increases for next year. So thankfully, the rates came in at 7% for health insurance, so 1 percentage point lower, and for prescription drugs came in at 20.5, so 5 percentage points lower. So that and some other adjustments within health insurance between March 9th and today allowed me to decrease the budget for health insurance by $110,000. So that's the kind of the biggest difference between my projection that I shared on March 9th and tonight. My projection on March 9th, I thought maybe I'd be able to reduce health insurance by $50,000. Again, those rates coming in, was able to decrease it by more than double that at $110,000. And then the last one under expenditures is $10,745. So this, as I mentioned last month, or last meeting as well, working with administrators and really just looking through the budget and finding areas where there may have been a request for an increase that we are going to purchase something this year with existing funds so we can take it out of the budget next year. So a specific example was a piece of equipment for athletics. There was actually enough funds in the current year athletic budget to purchase that, so that means we were able to take it out of next year's budget. Similarly, there were some supply items, some textbook items, looking to use some current year funds to purchase those, so that any of the departments where we decreased amounts, nobody is getting less next year than what they got this year. It's just some of the increases that folks asked for in next year's budget, we brought it back down to current year's rates, but are really addressing any of the needs in other ways. So those were all the changes on the expenditure side, which brought us to that $38,901,750. Jumping over to the revenue side, the biggest difference on the revenue side is the tax levy. So I know the past couple of meetings, we've had conversations with the board about the tax levy rate increase. So in this current budget, with everything else factored in, the tax levy would have to be at 3.86 in order to balance the budget. So the budget we presented on March 9th, the full budget we presented was a 3% tax levy. So this was an increase from 3% to 3.86, which is an increase of $163,000 in revenue from taxes. The second one, transferred from debt service fund, I also mentioned this on March 9th. I did decrease this amount to $40,000. Originally I had it there at 70 to balance the budget, but again, just the way that things came in. So as a reminder, the debt service fund is, you can think of it as a savings account that we have funds in for the purpose specifically to spend down or to spend against any of our debt. So we can pull money out of this fund and put it into the revenue side of the budget to help us pay for some of our debt in next year's budget. So I increased that by $40,000. And then last but not least, appropriate fund balance. Also on March 9th, I gave the example of in this current year budget, we pulled over money from last year's budget specifically for the bus lift. So that's what's called the appropriate fund balance. We're pulling money from one year that wasn't spent and pulling it into next year as a revenue source. So we did that for this current year for the bus lift because it was a one-time purchase. We knew that that money was specific for that item and that in the development for next year's budget, we could pull that number back down to where it had previously been. So I mentioned that at last meeting, potentially going through the budget and looking, are there any comparable items that kind of line up with those criteria of a one-time purchase or one-time expense that we can use appropriate fund balance for? And the one that I landed on is really the only one that kind of fits in that category, is next year we have to have a building condition survey done. So that is working with our district, the architect, engineer, to go through and basically assess the overall facilities of the district. And it's required by state ed that we do that every 5 years. So next year is the year, so it has to be in next year's budget. The amount for that was already in the budget that we presented. This is just using appropriated fund balance, so money from this current year budget, pulling that $32,500 into next year's budget as a revenue source specifically for that purpose. Yes.
Todd, do we get aid on that survey that's done?
I don't believe so, but I would have to check to be 100% sure, because it's not spent out of capital, so it's capital projects we do.
Right. But it is required by New York State, so I'm curious. I don't know the answer.
It is, yeah, I can check that. Yep.
Todd, I have a question. On the materials, the number from last month is different, and I apologize if you already mentioned this or explained it. The numbers are different, so are you reducing your reduction? You like that?
Yeah, I like that, yes. So for March 9th's presentation, the number that was in that line was kind of the number that was left over when I tried to balance everything
Right.
else. That was the leftover amount that we were going to use in the budget and find, correct. In starting to do that, that number was high. Like to really get to that number, we would have had to make some deeper cuts that would have been a little bit more challenging. So just the way that everything else shifted, and specifically that health insurance, when that number came in where it was and I was able to reduce by that larger amount, I felt comfortable reducing my reduction for the material supplies.
So the way to actually look at this is that these are the current numbers.
These are the current numbers, yes. And these, I've actually applied these to the budget. Last month, or not last month, I keep saying month, last meeting on March 9th, the slide that looked like this was my, potential pathway forward, but I had not actually put it all into the system for the budget. Everything you see on the screen is currently what I have in the system, in my budget development system for next year's budget.
Okay, so I still have a question though about materials and supplies.
Yep.
So what you're saying is, originally we were presented with something that was a little less than $11,000 higher for material and supplies district-wide.
Correct.
But you have found places to use this year's funds, so no one is getting cut in what they're requesting.
Correct.
It's either being done now, or it's in next year's budget.
Correct. Yeah. Any other questions? Then the one other slide that I have should also look familiar because we've looked at this for a couple different meetings. This is just showing different tax levy rates and what the impact would be on the overall balance. Now the green stripe across the screen is the proposed, that 3.86% tax levy increase, which gets us to a balance of 0, meaning expenditures and revenue are balanced. And then a variety of different numbers you can see. The allowable tax cap at the very bottom is 4.17. That is different from what we presented previously, because by changing that debt service amount, that number is actually part of the tax cap formula. So when you change that number, it actually reduces what our total tax cap could be. So that's why 4.17 is lower tax cap than what we looked at previously.
And I think Eric had a question. No? Okay.
No, it came up on the slide.
Okay. Any other questions, thoughts?
I thought I was only going to have one question tonight, but I'm not sure if it was February or on the earlier March meeting, we approved a new capital reserve fund. Are we going to fund that with any money through next year's budget?
In next year's budget, no. We will look at end of year this year, remaining funds this year could go into that capital reserve.
A portion of it or?
Portion of it. The priority for this end of year funds is the tax cert reserve for the potential of having to pay back taxes for a specific property that is contesting their taxes. So that's the priority, where the past couple of years, the capital reserve has been the place that we've been able to put money at the end of the year for future projects. This year, that is gonna take a second priority to that tax certiorari reserve. Love that word. For the capital reserve, correct. We do have the current capital reserve, I don't know the exact number off my head, top of my head, it's around 1.9 million. We can only put 2 million into that reserve, that's the cap on it. So we have a little room there to put funds, but once that's at that 2 million, we would need another capital reserve, basically another savings account to put money in.
So the one we did last, in my memory, is the third one we've done. That capped out at 2 million. Do we have three, or do we have?
We currently have two. We have one that we spent a portion of in this last project that actually helped decrease what we borrowed, right, for the project that was done. And then we created the capital reserves, the second one. I mean, there's been more over the years.
Okay.
Yeah, so the last one we approved was, no, I don't know, I'm not gonna say.
Well,
I'd
actually-
have to look back at the dates and the years.
Not that I want to belabor this, but I always wondered if they sunset it. Once they capped out, and then they were expended, could they go away, or could they be refunded, not refunded? And then we have to create a new one.
Correct. No, so once the capital reserve hits that $2 million mark, meaning that $2 million has gone into it, we could have put $2 million in and then taken $1.5 million out. But once it hit that $2 million mark, we can't put any more into it. So once it hits there, even if it comes down and we spend out of that reserve, that one's done. We can't put any more into it. So that's why every so often we're creating new reserves, because the old one's either capped out or were spent down, and you're creating a new one for future.
Now Eric had a question.
So, as follow-up with that slide and the levy and so forth, in the past, there's been some discussion that we've said that by not going to the maximum of the levy, we've been hurting ourselves in the long run, we'll say. Any projection as to whether or not that number should be bigger this year, closer to 4, or in terms of the calculations?
In terms of the potential gap,
Yeah.
so
Are we gonna catch up, or are we just totally gonna have the gap?
the gap is gonna be there. That is what it is. You can't make that up once you don't go there.
Once you don't go there.
By not going to the tax cap again, you're leaving a little
Yeah.
bit there, but you're also always balancing that with what taxpayers are able to do, right? So
Right.
that's trying to be fiscally responsible. Even this, we could go to 4.17. I could reduce the debt service fund back down and not make the tax cap go back to where it was, which was 4.38, I believe. But then that's also over 4, which we have not been there as a district in, I don't know since when. When I look at my 15-year look back, we were nowhere near 4%, so.
I don't wanna go there.
No, yeah. But 3.86 got us under the 4 mark, balanced it, also did everything else that was on that previous slide to get there. It wasn't just like, do everything with the tax levy. No, we want to balance out as much as we can and to be responsible, so.
So I guess my final question is, do you think this is what we're gonna eventually be looking at in May?
That's, unless the board has other concerns or adjustments that they want to see happen, this is what we will present April 13th. So, yes, right, for the next meeting, for the board to adopt as the budget that will then go for voters.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What is between the debt service and the appropriated funds, does that do anything to us going forward? Is there anything there where we should be concerned about what it's setting us up for?
Good question, Kelly. Appropriated fund balance, I would say no, because that, again, looking at that as a one-year thing. We're going to use that for the building condition survey. Next year, when I start the budget development process, I'll pull that number back down to where it has been in recent years. So I would say no. The debt service fund, so we, working with our financial advisors, we're already projecting to use $30,000 of that fund as an appropriate use of those funds that we have set aside for this purpose, to help offset some of the increase in debt that we were taking on, particularly from the bus purchases. So increasing that by 40,000, yes, we are pulling more from that account. If we truly pull from that and pull more from it over time, we will spend it down and it won't be there anymore, so we don't want to go there. With that said, it's also an assessment of the budget throughout the year. So when we get to this point next year, what I will be doing is looking at the budget to see, where do we stand with revenue overall? Did we get increased revenue from state aid somewhere that we weren't expecting that actually helped make up this 40,000 so we don't have to pull it from debt service? So what we can do is if we don't need it as a revenue source, once the year is underway next year, we don't do a transfer and it just stays there. The caution, to answer your question, that we want to be aware of is if we truly pull this and use it next year, we can do that. We can do that for several years, actually, and be okay. Just long term, you have to keep an eye on that to know that, correct, if you do that for many years, or it's not always going to be the place to go to balance the budget, because it's a savings account that when you spend it, it would be gone. With that said, I'm very comfortable with the numbers that we're presenting tonight and where everything stands and the amount that we have in that debt service fund. We can pull the 70,000 and be okay.
Any other questions related to the budget? All right, well, thank you very much. So then, let me just move on. Then I need a motion to adjourn the meeting. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everyone.